Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Admiral, for your service. And I was struck in your testimony at page 9, where you described the growing number of nations adopting the submarine as sort of a enhanced weapon system. You point out the Russians in the north have both attack and ballistic missiles. Indeed, that India is growing its submarine force. The Chinese seem to be the ones who are expanding the most. Australia, Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, and the Republic of Korea have launched new advanced submarines. This seems to be the class of weapon systems, of ships, that they are actively trying to compete with the United States. Is that a fair judgment?
I don't know that I would say they're actively competing with the United States. I think globally you have well over 300 submarines, and that number's growing. People recognize that they have a significant anti-access denial or anti-access capability, that there remains an asymmetric ability in undersea warfare and the ability to remain covert and stealth, and that technology is allowing very quiet submarines to be built that can be sustained at sea for longer and longer periods of time. So I don't know they're necessarily competing with the United States, because 300 submarines is a lot, but they certainly are, I think, re-emerging into the security environment in a way that we should be very thoughtful about.
But in terms of our fleet, which is clearly, because of technology and also the skill of the men and women who operate these vessels, is far superior. But no longer do we have, in one sense, kind of an open field. We are now beginning, and you're beginning to note, an increase in submarines that are being developed and deployed by Asian powers. That's some of your testimony?
Well, first of all, let me say that we have the very best submarines in the world, so I'm not concerned about the capabilities of our submarines or the crews that operate them. I am concerned about numbers matter, and where you have them matter, and the types of missions. Our submarines do a variety of missions across a broad spectrum of things, and there are places in the world where an asymmetric advantage from undersea warfare is important.
It seems to be important, based on your comment, in the context of anti-access doctrine. And is that what you're perceiving to be the major emphasis now in Asia, of particularly the major powers like China and others wanting to be able to deny access to our fleets?
I would say that it's a general trend around the globe is that people want to be able to control what happens in their economic zones and in their territorial seas. And then there are those powers that like to project power even beyond those areas, and that submarines provide them viable alternatives for doing that in a way that's sometimes asymmetric.
One other, shifting gears slightly, is that the littoral combat ship, the Freedom, I believe, has been deployed to Singapore, which is in your area of operations. We're going to have issues with respect to budgets and the capability of different ships. How do you intend to monitor the operation of the Freedom, or how are you going to employ it since it's in your AL?
Well, first, the Freedom, as you know, is the first of the class of the littoral combat ship. It's a concept ship. So, I mean, it was started out as to build it, and then to grow the R&D in it as you built it. The CNO, I think, has wisely decided to push it to the PACOM and to rotationally deploy it out of Singapore. It's a ship that's designed for littoral operations because of its speed, its shallow draft. It has the ability to be, over time, to be reconfigured. It has mission module packages that you are all aware of. And what it does for me out there, number one, it provides it provides a visible presence of U.S. in the littorals. It allows us to cooperate and participate with a key strategic partner out there, our partners in Singapore. It provides my 7th Fleet Commander and my Pacific Fleet Commander, Admiral Haney, another tool in the toolkit to be able to deal with peacetime events as well as those in crisis. So I'm anxious to get it out to the theater and to see what it can actually do.
And in that context, do you have a conscious plan to evaluate its capabilities, to make recommendations with respect to its both its design, its function, and its operational capacities?
We do. It'll be, the first, Freedom will be there for about 10 months in this first rotation to the area. During that time, my understanding is that we will concentrate on how do we move the mission module packages around, how do we employ them in the littorals, how do we integrate them into the operational fleet, the 7th Fleet. So it's good. It's a good thing because it gets it into the real world. It gets it to having to see what it can do and how it can best perform and how it can best be used.
Just the final question is, when you're doing your planning for a range of operations, from non-combatant evacuations all the way up to a main fight or a forced landing, will you sort of think in terms of where the littoral combat ship fits in those missions and what missions it may or may not be adequate?
Absolutely, and I think there are, from my other components, they're all looking very carefully at what they can use, how they can use littoral combat ship because of its reconfigurable capability, because of the amount of cargo and types of things it can carry, the flexibility that it has with air frames. So we'll be looking at that. We'll also be looking carefully at its mine countermeasure mission, which is an integral part of I believe, the Navy's strategy for next generation mine countermeasures, and we're going to ensure that those technologies are looked at as carefully as we can.
Finally, and in the remaining few minute or so, can you comment about the amphibious capabilities that you have in the Pacific now? You know, because of the Marines' deployment in Afghanistan and their extraordinary service there, the frequency of amphibious operations, from ship to shore, have been curtailed over time. Have they been reinvigorated? Are you conducting them on a regular basis? And what are the problems you see?
They have been reinvigorated. I think one of the initial impacts of the rebalance was to see the Marine forces, that many of them had been deployed into Afghanistan, the Middle East over the last decade, return to the Pacific. So General Amos, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, and I have had extensive conversations about how do we bring back the Marines, reintegrate them back on the amphibious ships that we have there. What are the type of missions that we need to pursue? What is the level of training? What are the exercises we need to be incorporating? So we have a good plan. I've asked the Navy to look at increasing the amount of amphibious lift that's in the AOR because of the geographically distributed operations that Marines have to do. I think there's a need for more lift in the PACOM area, and that has been, I believe, positively received, and we're looking at options of how best to do that.
Thank you, sir.